Let me ask everybody else among our guests to come back to the podium, those who are still here, and we'll try to have a bit of a group discussion and also take questions from the audience if you have them. So think about those for a moment, please, and I'll throw one more question to Jordan, if I may, and to Jade as well. Both of you are working with very big companies in developing these games and now also in developing the film. When you hear Don Rosenthal and Matt Hanson speak, do you wish, could you do more with open source kind of creativity?
I'll let you that one. Answer that one.
Well, no idea what that means.
Well, actually, listening to you guys talk today, it really got me to reminiscing about the early days of programming on the Apple II, because I think the feeling now is a lot like that. It's because there's a point when you realize that there's money to be made, and you get a lot more careful. You're like, well, okay, I've got a cool idea, I've got to protect it. I don't want to tell everybody that I know what my cool idea is because I want to make sure that I can make money off it. And that's kind of sad, because it was really more fun back in the days when all of us programmers would get together and just like give each other our routines, and because we all wanted to make our games as cool as possible. And I think as a community, we all benefit from that. So it's I'm kind of glad to see that wasn't just something that happened once. It's it's happening again now, and hopefully that wheel will continue to turn.
How about the other side? For you, Don Rosenthal and Matt Hanson, do you see elements here in the games that appeal to you, that you think you could use in your work, or are these still two very different genres for you? Perhaps you first, Don.
Yeah, I really think it exists well next to each other. I mean, if you look at Ubisoft, everybody regards your project as the highlight of the past years in game design and game creation. But you said, yeah, it was 300 people working for 3 years about. It's immense. It costs a lot of money, a lot of work. And also for artists, it might be very complicated to find themselves back in the game project. So I would rather continue working on the same topics but with smaller teams and enabling smaller teams of people to do something similar. Even when Ubisoft will beat everybody's asses with something totally insane, it doesn't mean that what other people do is irrelevant or not important.
Matt Hanson, any thoughts on?
I've got, ideologically, I'm not kind of opposed to kind of old media, but we're always kind of moving on, and I'm particularly focusing on kind of innovation and stuff in moving image, and I think there's certain blocks to that, and so how can we like look at moving past those blocks? So that's what I'm interested in, and it's quite interesting what you were saying about emotion, because I see gaming and movies as both having kind of cinematic elements, and they can really feed off each other as well. And one of the things we talked about with like the Matrix and doing much more of a kind of a fuller story, that's something we're doing with Small Angels, with backstories and stuff, and it's something I've really explored in the end of Celluloid. The way that different genres can borrow off each other. Like one of the most fantastic pieces of media I've seen in the last couple of years was called 9/11 Survivor, and it wasn't a piece of machinima, but it was actually a computer game using a Quake engine or something like that. But it was which is a first-person shooter, but it was what I call a first-person documentary. So somebody was spawned in the World Trade Center, at the top of the World Trade Center, and you had to try and escape out of that. And my girlfriend at the time said, "You're really sick for wanting to play this. It's like this particular thing. They're going to get killed. Isn't it really exploitative?" I say, "Absolutely not, because at the time, the media channels, old media channels, were just constantly zabroodering the playback of the craft hitting the towers." And I thought that's really exploitative, and that's really actually quite sick. But to be put in actually an environment and play as a person who might be able to survive it, or you might have to jump out of the window, and I think that's kind of taken the cinematic much further. So you can really borrow off each other, and I think you can take it in games. You can take the emotions in quite a different way than you can if you just saw like a documentary. documentary of that in cinema. So there's huge possibilities, I think, in both.
Don Tapscott, it seems to me that we've heard about two very different facets of interactivity this afternoon. The one facet is process, method, how you can make films in a collaborative way. And the other one is the way that digital technologies are facilitating real interaction in the fantasy world. Can you tie that up for us a bit, perhaps, in terms of collaboration?
Well, to me, the two sides can learn so much from each other. And I suspect there'll be a lot more convergence than we imagine today. And that a decade from now, we'll see things that are interactive and they're collaborative and they're engaging, but they look like a movie, basically, too. But you get to be in the movie. I think there are two other big sources that both sides can learn from. One is from other industries, like the whole question of how do you make money and how you monetize this. Look at other industries and how they're addressing this challenge. Software, open source, there's 150,000 open source application projects. But software companies are still making lots of money by finding ways to engage open source. IBM gives away its software to the Linux movement, and doing so builds a successful business model. Red Hat takes something like Linux and provides additional capability on that that people are prepared to pay for. Spike Source takes open source software and certifies it and develops a documentation for it and sells that. So people will pay for additional value upon an open base. Look at the music industry, and what they should be doing, and what will eventually happen, is that music will be in a pool, and we'll use actuarial economics to divvy up what songwriters and what composers and artists and performers and so on get paid for what. But the revenue model will be much more a subscription model than me paying for a song. Because if I'm a kid, let's face it, I want access to 20,000 songs, and I just can't afford that. But arguably, from a social point of view, I should be able to access the culture of my time and of my generation. And in other industries, if you buy something and you don't like it, you can take it back. But you can't do that in the current model of the music industry. The other big source that I would say, and why I emphasize in my talk a lot, is you can learn from young people. I'm convinced that in their culture is the new marketplace, is the new model of media and entertainment. In their culture is the new model of work and talent in our enterprises, the new model of how we orchestrate capability. And if we listen to them and learn from them, this is the first time probably in human history when children arguably can show us the way forward.
Jade Raymond, Don Tapscott just used the word convergence. You talked about some of the similarities between putting together Assassin's Creed and putting together a film. You're working on a new game now. Do you think of yourself in a way as a film producer, director, or is this still for you a very separate role?
No, well, I don't, because I don't have a background in film, so I think it would be a little bit pretentious of me to say that. But when I was listening to Matt talk, actually, surprisingly, the process for games is a lot less established as a strict way of making them. Like I said, because we're still defining what a game is, and because it's been changing all the time, each time we get new technology, the roles that people play and the people you need and how you do it is constantly changing. So there isn't this idea that, okay, you know, a writer writes it and it's his idea and the director gets to do this, and then there's 500 schlubs who just do their job, or, you know, just move a camera from here to there or dust the thing off. In video games, you have to have, you know, in the creation of Assassin's Creed, it wasn't 300 people, you know, just typing on their own in a computer. It was the collaboration, but not across the web, actually all in one big room. And everyone participates in the idea. And you can't really, I mean, there's one person who has the title of creative director, and one person who has the title of producer, and one person who has the title of music composer. But to make all of these things work and come together in games, everyone has to buy the vision. And everyone, you know, I come out here and I talk to people here about what we're doing in games, and before that I was talking to people before Assassin's Creed came out about what Assassin's Creed was and selling the vision. But the first step that I had to do and that the creative director had to do was sell the vision to the team so that they, and let them buy into it and add their own thing so that they were motivated and excited to make this thing. And a lot of the stuff in the game has nothing to do with what I could have imagined or Patrice could have imagined. It